comps are something that I think were heavily debated coming into the tournament because, Azael, as you said to me before we even went on broadcast, this was a team that dominated both spring and summer regular season by drafting the way that they do. The comps that we saw on day one where everyone was like, wait, they only have one damage threat. This is something that they were known for, right? LWX's Kai'Sa was dominating. It was one of his best performing AD carries throughout the year. So seeing these things and then seeing them not perform on it, it's a question of perhaps is their draft just being punished on the international stage, or is it just that this team is not properly utilizing the tools that they give themselves?
I think it remains to be seen for sure, but I'm of the camp that it is execution errors. When you look at LWX in his first Kai'Sa game, that was really not up to his level of play that we were expecting, and we'll see if he's going to be able to have a better performance here against GAM, who I want to see draft heavy engage. We want the aggression. When we saw them playing against
You want Kled mid, don't you, Azael?
I would love Kled mid. When we saw them playing against Splice in their first game, they played in this very aggressive 3-assassin comp, but then they had no engage. And Splice just sat back, scaled up, and ran them over. And you need to have engage options for GAM if you really want to try to pick your moments and be able to utilize these early game picks that they're going to go for.
Well, let's find out if we're going to find those champions you're looking for, Azael, because we are into the first phase of picks. Nautilus locked in for FPX. Kai'Sa is the response here for GAM Esports. And as far as the bans were concerned, Yuumi, Nocturne, Akali, followed by Pantheon, Xayah, and Rise.
Now, Doinby and Chris were both known as Nautilus players. It is something that is often put into the mid lane, very similar to the idea of Tank Sion, but you got a little bit more damage by going for the AP route, and of course you can act as a front line as well. Seeing GAM go for Levi's Lee Sin is definitely going to be an exciting one, as we know that with the Nocturne taken off the board, this will be his first Lee Sin of the tournament, and everyone knows how aggressive and creative he is on champions such as this.
Interesting to see the Lee Sin over the likes of that. Qiyana definitely would have had higher priority here on home soil. It's been hovered by both squads. The Kayle is open and available if at all interested, and it's just picked up. Qiyana Kayle already feels to me terrifying if you're in GAM Esports camp.
I agree. I think that the Qiyana is likely going to be going jungle. I think we are going to see AP Nautilus mid for Doinby and Gimgoom maybe playing weak side Kayle. That feels most like what they would have showed us in the LPL, but we have seen teams step away from that. Just last game, SKT, first career Yasuo game there for Teddy, so it's not by any means set in stone.
That Nautilus mid would have been Doinby's second most played champion as well, so definitely leaning towards comfort if it happens.
I am actually expecting Doinby to be playing the Qiyana. I was so impressed with what he was able to showcase throughout playoffs when the champion was in his hands, and I feel that putting Tian on something that can better enable this is more of what I'm expecting. With the Elise still open, one of his go-to junglers, it would provide AP, and I'd actually love to see GAM ban that away from him right now.
Crisp, also a very comfortable Nautilus player, one of his most played, so certainly does have the ability to be flexed down there. Will be interesting to see how they want to use this Kayle. You know, if there's any possibility of LWX playing it, you know, the Xayah, the Kai'Sa, both taken off the table for him. And those are kind of the big priority ones at Worlds thus far. But LWX, his most played was actually the Lucian in the LPL. They use this very, very heavily, so if they wanted to go a bit more aggressive on the bottom side, and they want to put the Nautilus down there, as Vedius is thinking, then Lucian could work really well, but it does actually get banned out alongside the Ezreal. So really trying to target some of the options that were prioritized heavily by LWX in the LPL.
And as you were saying, Isaiah, I feel that with the Leona banned, it does suggest that this Nautilus will be going into the bot lane because they're afraid of having to deal with it. GAM currently hovering more of a defensive bot lane, and that's to be expected when this team typically plays through the top side of the map. You have Levi, you're likely going to have Zeros playing his very well-known Jace that he had an impressive performance on at MSI earlier on in the year, and you get to follow that up with Dive coming out from the Galio. Definitely a GAM special of go in, go in, go in, and you can see how it all synergizes together. Lee Sin, Kai'Sa, Galio, very in-your-face kind of draft.
Slay, also a very comfortable Galio player. 5 times he played it in the VCS, so would have the ability to follow up on any sort of engage coming through from Lee Sin, and also works well with the Kai'Sa. If you can apply the Plasma there for the Kai'Sa, and we are going to get a Bane from LWX. Talk about throwing down the gauntlet.
What does this mean for the draft, gentlemen? Kenna will round out the GAM Esports team composition while FPX locked in the Renekton for the top lane. So it does look like it's going to be the Qiyana in the jungle, not in Doinby's hands as expected. But But yeah, let's zoom out, look at the 5v5s and what are our expectations?
So I think that Fun plus Phoenix have a very strong top side of the map. I think that what we saw yesterday from Tian was he actually invested a lot of resources into Gimgoon trying to get him ahead against Splice, and I think that they have the ability to do that again. They have to be careful though, because Xeris is actually going to be playing the Cannon rather than the Jace, which is a very good matchup into the Renekton in 1v1, but we know that Levi likes to hang around the top side of the map as well. So I expect bot lane to be very farm-focused, not a lot of interaction happening, whereas I expect a lot of ganking and fighting towards the top side of the map.
And I want to see what Levi can get done in these early levels, because pre-6, Kayle is going to be under her turret against this Jace. You're going to be getting bullied there, and I want to see if Levi can use that to get in Tien's face, to try to upset that jungler and really build an advantage for themselves. Because going forward, if GAM doesn't have that advantage, they don't have a lot of direct hard engage. They have a lot of follow-up, but it's very dependent upon a flank from Kennen or an insect from Lee Sin.
And welcome back to Worlds 2019. FPX taking on GAM Esports. Both of these teams sitting at 1-1. I've heard a few whispers, maybe not whispers, a few loud screams. This is the group of mess, as it has been dubbed from time to time. FPX, I think, Vedius, you said it the most succinctly. The most disappointing pre-tournament favorite. These are the champions of the LPL. And it's not too late to start living up to that performance.
Yeah.
Because, Azel, you were talking about the draft and how you felt it could be a little bit of execution on their side that's making them falter.
Has to be said, there's a lot of time for them to ramp up still in this tournament. We're going into Game 3. It's not as though they are knocked out of this group, knocked out of the tournament, or anywhere even close to that. They're heavy favorites here against GAM. If they end the first round robin with one hiccup and a 2-1 score, they're still sitting pretty to get out of the group, but my eyes immediately were drawn to that mid lane here with Kiaya playing not only the Ignite, but this is not a Klepto Jace. This is Airy. This is going to be Airy Scorch, as much early game damage as you can possibly get. And he's looking to slam Doinby.
Yeah, and I think this is something that is quite interesting to look at, because we can see in terms of solo lanes, GAM have an advantage in mid and top. A lot of support being shown to the teams on stage.
Yeah, the LPL faithful, no matter where Worlds is hosted, they make it feel like a home stadium for these teams.
I absolutely love it. Earlier today in Countdown, Spawn definitely set up an alley-oop on the Fnatic fans, saying, building up the hype, but the amount of fans here for the LPL representatives is huge. And you know what? Their expectations are going to be very high. FPX is one of the newer organizations to represent the region on the international stage, and they took the LPL by storm, upsetting many longtime RNG fans, and I want to see if they can return to that strength.
So for those unaware, FPX, one of the main reasons why so many analysts have them rated so highly is because for 2 splits in a row, they finished first in the end of the regular season. They were close to being one of the most, or they were close to being the most winningest team in the history of the LPL. They dominated during the regular season. In spring of playoffs, they lost to JDG in a very intense best-of-5, but this split, they dominated. They went 3-1 in both of their best-of-5s, and they looked clean doing it. They are known for their creative and unique drafts, and it's kind of overshadowed because of how many creative drafts that we've seen at Worlds, but these were kind of the benchmark for seeing all this stuff because of Doinby and his creative champion pools and playstyles.
And they're incredibly dominant, 39-8 thus far across Summer Split and Worlds, a very impressive mark. And the thing that really stood out to me about Fun Plus is how well they snowballed games. Statistically, they are the best snowball team really in the world. They expand their lead tremendously. When they are ahead, they get incredibly further ahead, and they almost never lose with any sort of gold lead in the early game.
Well, that definitely came true when they played Splice. Fell behind, managed to punish a mistake from Splice's, let's say, decision-making, and found themselves a win that really should have been a Splice victory if they had played it more cleanly. Let's turn our attention to GAM, of course. They're playing back on the international stage, and Levi in particular, very excited to see what he can do this game. There was a graphic there on just before we went up. The VCS versus LPL win-loss is currently 1-8 across MSI and World.
Yeah, it's not the best record, but I feel that a lot of the VCS region is excited to see what GAM is capable of. With the return of Levi, this team there were high expectations put upon them, but this split, they struggled a lot. There were a lot of roster changes, many players playing in multiple different roles, but the moment that roster settled, they went on an unbelievable win streak, winning 16 games in a row. And expectations were very high on them because of their playstyle, which was very reminiscent of what we saw back in 2017. High action, Levi ganking all over the map, Zeros carrying on these carry top laners, and then in their first game, they didn't really do anything. We saw a bunch of assassins. It felt like that they had the assassin buff, yet they didn't get to utilize any of it. And it wasn't until yesterday that we actually got to saw them play the style that they do, looking for constant fights, going in constantly in with the Nocturne ultimate. And I think that many fans of this team are hoping to see that kind of a performance against the likes of FPX, because being able to challenge one of the top teams or one of the highest expected resulted teams at Worlds is definitely something you want to see from a team like that.
Just a quick update. We are working on adjusting the lighting for the players to ensure that they're comfortable and competitive. I didn't see that tattoo. Was that a Charmander hiding under an umbrella from rain? Somebody help me out. I have to get a close glimpse of it.
Someone on Twitter. I'm not really sure,
yeah,
so
I'm
not going to guess, but GAM really did make their name, as Vedius is talking about, from having these big upsets, because they were such an exciting, aggressive team. And it just feels right having Levi back in the VCS, back on the international stage. I kind of felt like he was wasted in NA Academy, and it's so exciting to see what he's going to be bringing out for us at Worlds, because anytime you're watching GAM, they are going to give you something fun. They're going to give you something exciting, and that is why I think they're such a beloved team by the international fans.
Now, what do you think will be exciting about the comp they're running today? Kennen, Lee Sin, Jace.
Dive,
this is about as standard, right, as I think you're going to see.
I think,
give me a timing window then. Are you going to be bold enough to...
A timing window?
Yeah, when do you think GAM would...
Level 6, level 9, every time the cooldowns are off. That's usually how GAM like to play.
Keep track of that.
But as El made a great point in draft, which is that they pretty much can't engage unless, number one, you find a flank, or number two, your flash is up. So they're pretty reliant on finding big fights in very specific cooldown windows, or by having really good setups. And I feel that what we saw yesterday was that whenever the enemy tried to approach, that was when they would just initiate. And I feel that they're not afraid to just engage on you when a small window opens up. But I do think that it's very easy for FPX to just stall the game out and actually just look to scale into the late game.
And that's what it's going to be, right? It's going to be these two kind of opposed strategies where Levi is going to have a lot of pressure on him, I feel like, to be flashing in and getting these kicks to start things off, because while they don't have a lot of direct engage, they have incredible follow-up. Because once you kick someone and once you apply that plasma, Kaisa can fly in, Galio can fly in comes the Kennen, everything really starts to work. But it's that initial swing that is going to be tough to do, especially when there's a pretty tough front line to get through.
It is speed gate into... Well, I think that's just it. I think it's
speed gate is there.
Yeah, I think it's speed gate into run at enemy. That's my theory.
This is the brilliant plan.
Yeah.
They'll never expect it.
Yeah. I'm a fan of speed gate.
Who expects you to come through the front door, quick shot?
LPL. Be massive lead after this.
So we can see that Zeros just doesn't have the cover because the wave is in a bit of an awkward spot. This makes it very easy for Tian to, after already clearing the top side of the map, just walk into the lane and set up the play. Now Levi thinking he can at least get a kill onto Gimgoon. Tian is just body blocking for Gimgoon to make it impossible for Levi to land that Q and make it a 1-for-1. Beautifully played by Tian to help his top laner out.
800 gold in the lead already, 3 kills to 0. Now it is important to keep track of the CS because Gimgoon, with the late arrival to lane, plus the difficult lane matchup, especially in the early stages, he's down 33 CS. A kill and assist will be helping him out, however.
Yeah, he's not really that behind, honestly. It's 300 gold. It certainly is impactful, but this is not an insurmountable lead by any means. This is going to be tough to snowball, and he's even being the aggressor here. You know, had that gone a different way, had Levi arrived in time and they kill off Gimgoon and reset the wave with him having no TP, this game could look massively different. But it's about these small timing windows, and FPX has made the most of it thus far.
And what's important to remember is that for GAM, they actually had a lot of strong pushing lanes in the early game, but Tian has been the difference maker. The junglers have now met.
They have indeed. The Shock Blast won't find a target though. Levi move forward. There comes the ultimate from Kayle. Kiai is in trouble, running for his life. That's a shutdown at least. Kiai manages to get out with his life for a moment or two, and Levi is traded 1-for-1.
So GAM finally get a shutdown onto Tian. Definitely helps them get a bit more gold into their back pockets, but FPX doing what they often do and responding in kind. They're able to come back, make it a 1-for-1, and stay relevant, or keep an advantage in the kill lead.
I'm really concerned for Kiaya, though. He's already behind Doinby, and Doinby now gets a kill out of that. This Kayle, it's only going to get tougher and tougher for Kiaya. He went for the Airy, he went for the Scorch, the Ignite. He's trying to slam this lane. He didn't even come close to doing that.
And I think a lot of praise needs to go to Crisp. This is a guy that's been roaming a lot in the early laning phase. His windows for roams have also been very good, where his AD carry has not been in any danger, and he's been covering a lot for Doinby during the early laning phase to allow him to get to this point.
That's before he's even got access to that ultimate to set up any proactive kills. I mean, combined depth charge plus Renekton, Kiana, Kayle, actually any of them, that's going to be near instantaneous or guaranteed death. All right, Levi's not going to spot out Tian here. He's going to be standing in the bush behind him. That is just a supreme display of talent for the LPL over the VCS.
So this play upsets me because Tian shouldn't really be able to make it this play when both top and mid were actually pushing in favor of GAM. So Levi thinks he's safe, and Tian gets it because he just catches him by surprise. On paper, this play shouldn't be able to work, but he's able to find it. It's almost like expect the unexpected.
I think he had the confidence to do it just simply because of that pink ward. They had the Rift Scuttle control, so they had some vision up in this area. Hadn't seen anyone from GAM come through to drop down any wards whatsoever in quite a while. And he makes a little bit of a risky play, but it pays off hugely because even if you run into Lee Sin in the jungle, you know how good Kiana is in those small quarters where you're almost guaranteed to get an ultimate stun.
Yeah, and I mean, he already has the warrior enchant completed, so he knew he had the damage to find someone if he knew he had the damage to kill someone if he happened to stumble upon them. But now FPX sit with a pretty healthy gold lead as we approach the 10-minute mark. Infernal is the first Drake on the board that neither team has really looked to set up for. Given GAM's comp, I feel like they were in a better position to set up for it because FPX, their mid and bot lane want to scale up a little bit more. And given that Gimgoon has been put a lot of pressure on him, I feel that FPX don't feel super confident trying to force that play right now, as it would also offer the perfect situation for GAM to find that dive comp teamfight that they're looking for.
You have to wonder if GAM don't find some way to claw back a few kills at the gold deficit. This is just going to get significantly harder. You can see Slay and Levi moving towards the top lane to set it up. At the same time, Crisp has roamed to mid, and just before the action breaks out, Vedis, you talked about the gold lead that FPX have accrued for themselves. And before picks and bans, we talked quite extensively about FPX's interesting games throughout the group. You can see versus J-Team, plus 500, versus Splice, down 700. And versus their league average in summer, this game is feeling a lot closer to what we kind of expected from them in the tournament.
Exactly, and like I talked about earlier on, they are so good at exploding these gold leads. Very often, when they have these sorts of gold differentials, they triple it going forward in that gap between 15 and 20 minutes, which really is an incredible mark as far as snowballing goes. Grabbing the Infernal, going to do a lot of favors for them here too, but at least it was traded back by GAM. At least they were attempting to, rather, from this Rift Hill, but getting pushed off that is pretty problematic.
Yeah, the early game is not going in favor of GAM whatsoever, and the difficulty is that LWX and Doinby are just going to continue to scale up. They're only going to get stronger the later the game goes, and while this dive power from GAM does exist, you've also got to remember how much protection there is on the side of FPX and how much disengage there is. Kiana ultimate to knock away the engage tools, as we see a bit of an all-in from Zeros.
We do. Trade of ultimates thus far. Zeros going to look to flash the wall. Wait, manages to pull it off. Gimgoom follows suit. And that was an easy solo kill in what was Gunblade versus Merctread's Door and Shield.
That was the only strong place on the map they had. And when you're losing solo kills on the top side after you've committed so many resources to zoning Gimgoon off and he started without teleport, it's really, really tough now to find a place to play to as Levi.
And this is much more of what we expected from FPX. A bit of trading happening in the bot.
More than a trade, my friend. Slay uses the stopwatch to go golden. Sin now takes a lot of damage as Slay now flashes away. LWX, and what do you see for the chase? Final hours on cooldown. He's chasing forward. LWX can continue to look for more. There's the ultimate from Galio, and it will get popped before he dies. It looked like Levi just showed up in the lane. He's found himself a kill onto LWX. Now the Dredge Line will not find a target on the Zing. Tumbles away. Levi cannot do more. There's a dive happening in the top lane. Rift Herald's already been summoned, and that's because Zeus, was he killed again?
FPX found themselves 2 quick kills, one in the top lane, one in the bot lane, and they are snowballing this gold lead out of control. Beautiful stuff from Crisp in the bot side of the map. Stacking his CC well, being extremely patient. He played that beautifully to allow LWX and Chris to come out on top.
While Zeros was walking back to lane, Tien was doing the Rift Herald, and as soon as they saw this fight happening on the bottom side, they easily set up for the dive. Zeros arrives, dies immediately, loses his tower. He's now way behind, and that's a Dusk Blade this early on after the Warrior for Tien. He can one-shot really anyone on this team.
Black Cleaver completed for Renekton. You have to feel Blade of the Rune King is going to be picked up by LWX. Just so you know, the previous game between SKT and Clutch set the highest goal difference at 15. The record is 5-9-6-1. We're 2 minutes away, and FPX could set the new highest goal difference at 15. That's what I'm watching for.
So let's have a look back at this dive up into the top lane. Renekton just tanking the... oh, wow.
Welcome to League of Kiana.
Yeah,
thank you for trying.
It was just a disappearing act, really. So the hook initially comes out from Crisp. He then chains the CC to try and shut down Slate. They buy a little bit of time, but then look at what Crisp does next. He's waiting for this minion to fall, and his eyes are actually set onto Xin. And then they're able to force him back to force Slay to then provide peel. Levi's then way too late to the fight, and he ends up dropping as well.
It was good presence of mind from LWX and Crisp also to just engage in what was a winning 2v2 instead of retreating back into Levi and what would have been that 3v2.
Taking a look, there's a couple of plates still available in the bottom lane, but they're going to time on 8 seconds. I didn't look at the timer first. One tower already secured by FPX. Crisp and Tia now moving forward. That's an auto attack connecting on a Slay that holds him in place. Condemn will also lock him against the wall. And the supreme display of talent. 5, 1, and 2. The Dusk Blade of Drakthar and Warrior is doing work. We turn our attention to Doinby. Oh, man! Kiaya and the rest of GAM Esports may just be magicians because they are vanishing before our eyes.
You asked about the gold lead record. I think we're going to pass it. FPX are just running over the map. Tien is everywhere, making it look so easy on this Kiana to pick up kills.
And you can just see how FPX plays slightly differently from SKT in that they are grouping and they are diving. They are overforcing these fights, and they know they can get away with it because of the massive gold lead that they have. They are not at any real risk here because, look, see on the minimap that Doinby does have pressure on the bot side, and even if he doesn't get this kill for sure, Crisp is going to be there to help support him. And he doesn't need him, though. He ends up finding that kill.
Yeah, there's really no danger for him. Had the ultimate, had the flash, and that is just a Gunblade to set up for the Q. Q-Max, of course, with this AP build. He is massively ahead of his lane opponent now, closing in on a 2,000 individual gold lead. But it's Tien who's the richest player in the game, and he's so far ahead of the pace that he really, anyone he gets onto is just dead.
Man, unbelievable. So just confirming, of course, that FPX did break the at 15 record. It is technically second of entirety of Worlds. There was one gold lead in the plains that was higher. And it looks like Zin's in trouble. It was a good flash pretty quickly on.
What is
but
this
just not
champion?
going to get away. I mean, 6, 1, and 2. It doesn't matter what champion you play. You're going to look like that. Doinby's able to flash away. Divine Judgment keeps him alive a few seconds longer. He got one additional flash out of it. That's at least a kill back for GAM.
I'll give you any assassin that's 6-1 and 2.
Touche.
I'm not giving you the Janna one shot.
Yeah.
The Flash W. Yeah.
Maybe if you get a Howling Gale fully charged,
Okay,
right?
yeah.
Maybe. But yeah, any assassin at 6, 1, and 2 will look like that.
I mean, the Duskblade is already completed for Tian. He just straight up one-shot Zin. And while GAM are able to at least find a pick back onto Doinby, it's going to do very little to swing this game back around. They're going to have to keep finding these picks. They're going to have to find a miraculous team fight in order to swing this game back in their favor.
We'll see.
You just laughed at the possibility.
No, it is. Anything is possible, but when
No,
you
I'm just telling you, the only way they come back
Yep.
is if they find a miraculous team fight.
No, there's no doubt about it. And the odds of that happening with a Kayle, Kiana, Vayne are
Very
astronomically low. And the thought that I've had in my head, which we'll get to in a moment,
Dangerous.
is that's a dash backwards. Depth charge will connect onto one. Tian's moving forward. Doesn't even hold on to anything else. I mean, the ultimate came down, and with the help of Doinby, just easily picks up another kill. This is actually the performance that you would expect from a pre-tournament World Championship favorite.
Yeah.
From the #1 seed from the LPL when coming up against one of the teams from an emerging region. There's no doubt VCS are good, are looking strong. But this is what you would expect when that disparity is so high.
And I'm just excited of the possibility of FPX performing as well as they did in the LPL, because that gives another team that could then perhaps challenge a G2 or an SKT in this knockout stage. And you want to see these close competitive games as we're going forward, and some of these top teams are certainly going to be able to provide that.
And you've also got to think about this in the context of the group as well. The fact that J-Team was able to find a win over FPX is massive for them in the context of this group, because if FPX now go into the second week in this form...
They go Super Saiyan.
Right? And so Splice are going to be beating themselves up over the fact that they couldn't find that big win over FPX, because if they play like this, FPX is going to look even stronger going into week 2.
Yeah, absolutely the case. And 18 minutes in, just shy of 10,000 gold up, 10 kills more than GAM, 4 towers to 0. Baron hasn't even spawned yet. And look at where FPX are pushing into the jungle. There's no Dragon up, there's no Baron up. Like, they have to wait for objectives to play around because of how far ahead they are this early.
And what they're going to play around is just all the jungle camps. This is one of the reasons that FPX snowballs leads so effectively, is that they just bleed you out of your own jungle. They don't just wait for the Baron, as we're going to see another one-shot here.
And we are indeed. Zeros stays alive longer than anybody would have expected. Zeros escapes. The taunt comes down for Slay, and finally he's taken out. His LWX moves forward. Now there's a threat in the top as Slay is running for his life.
You know, I'm going to say, Azel, this is the other way in which they snowball their leads. There's jungle camps, and there's killing 3 members of the enemy team.
Yeah, why would you take the golems when you could just take the team?
Yeah, GAM moving into an area of the map.
Oh, Crisp was looking for the flash hook over the wall. Wasn't able to connect, but they will open the base before 20 minutes. The inhibitor is exposed in the top lane. Gimgoon with the Black Cleaver BF sword, putting some damage in the bottom. Holy moly, the mid lane is now under pressure as well. And at some point, they can decide to go play for the Purple Worm. But this is... It's just fully activated and awakened FunPlus Phoenix.
I agree.
Both of my analysts are just nodding, going, yes, what would you like me to do with that, Trevor?
Yes.
Indeed, quite so. Yes.
Quite, yes.
The biggest thing for me is you step back and, you know, we talked about the impact this has in the group with FPX waking up, and now every other team is watching FPX going, oh, bugger. We really were hoping for the 2 previous days' team to show up, and that's definitely not the case.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things, though, where you have to say, it's only one game.
Yeah.
You know, and they've got more evidence of having poor games than they do good games so far. And I think that one of the big things was that you gave Tian a jungler where he was able to have a very high impact on. So I think that Crisp and Tian together have had very strong performances in this game, which is definitely important for the for the team, but I also think the biggest takeaway here is don't give FPX Kiana, because I think that when they get their hands on this champion, they found a very easy way to snowball the game.
The Kiana has been huge, but I'm also just kind of terrified of this performance from Doinby. He was smashing this Jason lane, right? You know, he's actually winning the lane, which I consider absolutely destroying him when he's going for these really aggressive summoners and everything. But yeah, against the Ignite Airy.
I do also think that it's important to recognize how FPX as a team play, and it is often where they use Crisp and Tian to work with Doinby as well to enable.
It's very important to remember, Crisp was in the mid lane at least 3 times, helping out Doinby. Multiple ganks, multiple initiations. But it doesn't matter. You won the lane, right? And that's what matters most. Is now Zeros will throw down the slicing maelstrom. Doinby's under threat, apparently. He's easily able to escape. And now Doinby are looking for some additional support as Slay will get locked up against the wall. I'm just trying to every version there, Zale. The inhibitor's going to go down in the top lane.
Which one feels best, Trevor?
Kayle and Renekton are able to make that happen. No kill in the mid lane. Kiaya and Levi running for their lives as in the tower falls 7-0.
They don't need the Baron, it feels like. They're just absolutely running over this game. And with this sort of a gold lead, over 12,000, double Infernal, they have all the options in the world as to how they want to close this one out. And they are going to retreat back to this Baron. GAM doesn't really have any options. You pray for a miracle steal, but Tian and Gimgoon are waiting for that possibility.
Kiaya is aware that they're in the brush. He's just going to check it out. This Baron is going down pretty quickly with the Vayne.
It is indeed. Is anyone going to go into the pit? Shock Blast comes out. Will not do anything more. Here comes Tian. Supreme display of talent. Locks up a couple. Zeros, no slicing maelstrom available. Kiaya running for his life. And now LWX and Doinby chasing him down. Levi is dead. That's the second of the fight. Baron was secured at 22.5 minutes. And if memory serves correctly, G2 set the fastest winner groups at around 24 and a bit. Let's see if FPX can finish it. They've got the highest GD of 15, and I'll get the exact timing from our stats team in a moment.
2 members of FPX are sitting with over 2,000 gold right now, and they're choosing not to reset. They recognize that Levi is dead. They have a Baron buff. Why bother going back to spend your gold when you've got more than enough to just look and end this game?
Maybe pushing in 23 minutes, pushing onto the Nexus turrets. The first one will fall. Baron buff still up, and there's not much that Gigabyte, GAM Esports can do. The last tower is standing, and Fun plus Phoenix are pushing it. Dredgeline won't find the target though. The Nexus will be the focus. Do FPX look for the tower dive? Slicing Maelstrom goes in, finds a couple kills. Divine Judgment comes down, and the Nexus will fall. It's the quickest game of group so far.
FPX can be really happy about this one. We saw it in the Doinby interview coming into the day. They wanted to win this game, to regroup, to rebuild that mental state and that confidence that they had entering this tournament. And I think that they can say they've fully done it.
Yeah, I was really impressed with Tian and Crisp. I felt that together they worked extremely well together. And I was overall very happy with what we saw from them. I think that if FPX can maintain this level moving into the second week, they are prime favorites to go 3-0 and look to dominate and top the group.
They definitely look that strong. Huge shout out to the stats team. I definitely make them work extra hard when I'm on the test. And just confirming, of course, FPX did set the fastest game of Worlds 2000.